How I got our translator fired.
I was working a job that had me operating in one of our offices overseas.
We would have business expenses.
And those receipts would be in the language of the country we were in, obviously.
Those expenses were for things like printer ink,
office equipment,
cleaning services, marketing costs.
All pretty standard stuff. Well, around this time we got a new VP over our region who worked out of head office in LA.
This VP came up with this brilliant idea to hire a translator to translate all of receipts to make sure we weren't sneaking in bullshit.
Fair enough. However, the issue that arose was that we had to send our expenses to the translator who would translate the receipt then submit for reimbursement. The problem was this translator was a real Karen type. She would demand better scans of the receipts.
Oftentimes after we had already thrown it away. She would argue if we really got the best deal on whatever we bought. I remember in one transaction on about $200 of ink cartridges she asked me why I didn't order
online from this common website.
To which I said they were out of stock at the time.
And we needed the ink, so we bought from a local store.
To which she said I was spending too much money.
To which I said it's none of your concern.
Your job is to translate the receipt.
To which she said if I want her to submit my expenses I need to be nice to her. To which I said she needs to learn her place. She's a translator, not a VP that gets to instruct me
what to do. After this encounter she started being extra anal with my expenses. So one day I came in the office early to call her and try and work things out.
She basically told me that I screwed up by pissing her off.
And she expected my expense reports to be perfect or she wouldn't submit them unless they were.
I told her if she keeps this up she won't have a job much longer.
She laughed and wished me well and hung up. A few months later we had our annual meeting in LA, and after the meeting we were at a bar and I walked up to our VP and started up a conversation. I steered the conversation to expenses and I asked him how much in monthly expenses did he typically reimburse us for in the country we worked out of. He said about $3,000 to $4,000. I acted surprised and asked, "Is that all?"
He goes, "Yay." To clarify that $3,000 to $4,000 is the typical spend.
And he says yay, it rarely gets above $4,000. So I ask him about how Karen, our translator, is doing. He says she's doing a good job and I nod my head and I go, how much fraudulent expenses has she
caught?
Quote, it's important to note,
every employee that was submitting expenses was well paid. They'd be awfully stupid trying to skim some extra dollars via fraudulent expense reports.
He goes, what do you mean?
Quote,
I said, well, you hired her to ensure all the expenses you were reimbursing us for are legitimate.
Right.
Her job is to translate them for you, correct? He says it is. And I ask, so is it safe to presume you've done that to ensure people aren't submitting BS expenses? He says, you could say that. I smile and ask, so how much in fraudulent expenses has she caught? Quote, he thinks for a moment and goes, I don't think she has caught any.
So I ask, and how much do we pay her?
Quote, he says it depends on her workload, but between $2,500 to $3,000 a month.
I smile and ask, does it make sense to pay someone $3,000 a month to translate $3,000 in receipts?
Quote,
well, she ensures we aren't getting fraudulent expenses, and I counter, well, you said she hasn't count any in the last 9 months. And the expenses are always between $3,000 to $4,000, so as long as the expenses stay in that range, wouldn't it be safe to assume that the expenses are legitimate?
And couldn't you bring on a translator on a contract basis if they get out of hand?
Quote, he sees my point.
And imagine the cost savings. We would probably save over $40,000 a year. That's a good chunk of change, isn't it?
Quote,
"The VP tries to defend his position, but she does a good job, and I counter, but you could frame
this as you saved us $40,000 a year and created a baseline to judge expenses by.
Cutting costs is always good for the bottom line and the end of the year bonuses, isn't it?" Quote,
FYI, I knew that a major percent of a VP comp package with the company had to do with the company's margin. At the end of the year, the bigger the margin,
the bigger the bonus.
You can see the twinkle in his eye. We carry on the rest of the night. A few weeks later we get an email from the VP saying that we are submit to all our expenses
directly to the admin for reimbursement and that we have let go of Karen. FYI, Karen wasn't her real name, obviously. TL.
Doctor got my translator fired for being difficult by getting the VP to see she was a waste of money. Sweet justice, and also without making yourself look petty.
Good job framing it to the VP as cost savings. Which it is. And appealing to his love of bonus money. Also $3,000 translation fees for $3,000 of expenses is kind of nuts, and probably the first thing that
would be classified as cost-cutting by any auditor. $30 to $300, okay.
$3,000.
That makes no sense whatsoever. You got her, and you got her good. Kudos.
Holy shit.
Her entire job was based on a useless task and she wasn't smart enough to realize it. What an idiot.
This will never happen after our computer overlords assume command.
I once had a consulting job in which I had to file expenses every month. If ever I missed a month due to work,
I would have to do 2 months' worth of expenses. Which meant a bunch of my receipts would start to fade. Especially ones from those card terminals.
Anyway,
as per procedure, once my manager approved my expenses,
which was never a problem, an accountant from finance team would process them. Most accountants were pretty chill about it and would process immediately. But there was this one accountant, Kevin, who would be anal about receipts being perfectly visible. He would cause me unnecessary trouble saying I would need to prepare an Excel sheet of expenses, which wasn't easy and frankly a complete waste of time. There was no business use of the spreadsheet. Kevin just wanted one for no reason. So eventually I made friends with one accountant who I basically told that I would directly send him my expenses. Problem solved. Later I heard Kevin had caused trouble to a bunch of people, and one of the senior execs blasted him on email. Hopefully he learned his lesson. Not only did you get her fired, you now are memorable to the VP. Hard to tell just from one story like this. But the way you wrote him, he doesn't seem the type to have it out for those under him because he fears for his own job security. Which means that you now have a credit of sorts with upper management. He'll remember you. If you need to bring up some issue, use that contact wisely and it can seriously help your career. Or at least smooth over some rough edges in that particular job. Good job all around, I say. Never mess with a more talented bureaucramancer than yourself. They will use the system to get you. My ex-wife is a translator. She would have never acted like this Karen. She knows her job is to translate, not make or enforce policy. She might mention issues that she comes across, but she wouldn't be a bitch about it. I've seen her work with some documents in extremely bad condition, including bad scans, and she would do whatever she could to get the job done and only say something if it was simply impossible to read the document. Holy crap. Hiring her in the first place was a ridiculous idea. I've worked in accounting departments. When we get a foreign receipt, we use Google Translate. Easy breezy. That's all there is to it. Always funny when people think they have any power without actually bringing any benefit to the company.
I once had an entire team disband this way. Not fired. Just assigned different tasks. In my previous job, I developed and maintained telecom invoice software for large customers. The idea was that my company would pay local telecom suppliers in the countries our big international customers were active,
and then bill the customers for their telecom. This way,
the customer would receive one big invoice,
instead of a separate invoice for each country they were in.
In order to create these invoices,
we would process data from the local vendors through the software we created. In the beginning,
there was a lot of things that were unbillable due to the system not knowing how to charge it.
So a team was created to manually go over the issues and decide how to bill them. After a few months and many tweaks to the software, the obvious and recurring solutions were put into code, and all we were left with was the really exceptional cases. At a certain point, I started monitoring how much money we actually billed additionally thanks to the efforts of that team, because the weekly meetings were becoming a drag. One day, we had a meeting for an hour with 4 people and in the end managed to bill something like $17 extra. After talking to my manager about it, that marked the last time we had that meeting and all team members were assigned to different projects. Your company still need a receipts translator? It'll take 1/3 what your VP paid her S. The translator would have only made sense if you already had one on staff. There are few things more annoying, to say the least, than a translator who thinks their job is something else. I just gave birth in a foreign country, and let's just say I'd like to know where the hospital translator got her medical degree from. Bows to your ingenuity, a pro example. In the mood I am in currently, in OP's position, I would have called Karen the translator and told her specifically that I fucked her job. I intensely dislike difficult people. I thought this was going to be a Team America, World Police reference. I'm studying translating and interpreting, and that would be an easy dream job, especially right out of Kaleha. Too bad she fucked it up. I hope this was a long time ago. I can translate a menu real time with a Google app and my phone camera. Don't even have to type it in. Worked for the federal government. There used to be a group which checked every expense invoice. This cost several $1 million a year. The amount of unreimbursable claims caught was less than this. They switched to spot checking with further investigation if they found expenses which shouldn't be claimed. The cost of verifying expenses went way down, but the unreimbursable claims caught remained roughly the same. So they were finally getting back more than what is cost to verify the claims. The claimant would have to reimburse the government, and they may be further disciplined depending on the seriousness of the breach. I highly doubt this happened because A. I've seen a similar story posted. Same beats. Can't find it ATM, but will add to my comment when I do. And B. Telling a VP how to do his job, to the extent where you're telling him how to frame firing someone who hasn't done anything overtly wrong, is not exactly the path of success. This was my issue the first time this story was posted as well. The VP would definitely question what's in it for op. Not bad of a story.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.